a question of numbers. It's not a question of where you're from or who you're from. It's a question of, can 600,000 additional people come to the UK every year without the NHS facing huge amounts of strain, school places, roads, shops, every single part of the country, there's more strain on, there's more competition, and there's less to go around effectively. I think that's the main point.
Narinda?
Well, I'd say that's the government's problem. That's not the asylum seekers' problem. And I think that you...
Well, it's certainly not the British people's problem. I can assure you of that. And I'd argue it's not the government's problem either. We never asked them to come here. She's saying open borders and anyone and everyone has the right to move to the UK without invitation or documents, regardless of how many turn up and regardless of the strain they put on the country. In other words, the British people have no more right to this island than anyone else in the world. That is the argument she's making. Asylum seekers, even ones who actively hate Britain, have a right to say, we're all moving to your country, and if there is not enough housing or doctors' places and school places, etc., that is your problem, not ours. You just better make sure there is a red carpet rolled out when we arrive on your shores illegally and all those nice new houses are all ready and furnished so we can move in straight away. Next, she says it's racist how we haven't opened up to the rest of the world like we have for Ukrainians. Firstly, she's wrong because we have taken in massive numbers of people from Hong Kong and Afghanistan as well, and many other places. Just walking around proves that. But regarding Ukrainians, that was a specific effort because it was a geopolitically relevant war close to home against a common enemy. John Barnes also made the same ignorant arguments. If they want to play that game, maybe they should all ask the pro-Palestine protesters, where are all the protests for those killed in every other conflict around the world? Way more have died in Syria and Sudan. Why, oh why, is there no protests for them, I wonder? And ask them why they never ever protest for Ukrainians with the same relentlessness they do the Palestinians. Finally, her opponent is only partly correct when he said it's all about numbers. Yes, numbers are a massive part of it and the pressure it places on infrastructure. But just as significant is who is coming and what cultural and social changes do they bring with them, and are they compatible with British life? So it's not just about numbers. Anyway, take a listen to this. I hope I've debunked all the ridiculous arguments you'll hear in this debate.
Ben, people are asking this morning, is it racist to say there's a migration problem?
No, not at all. In fact, there's net support among all ethnicities in the UK for lower migration because at the end of the day, it's a question of numbers. It's not a question of where you're from or who you're from. It's a question of, can 600,000 additional people come to the UK every year without the NHS facing huge amounts of strain, school places, roads, shops, every single part of the country, there's more strain on, there's more competition, and there's less to go around effectively. I think that's the main point.
Narinda?
Well, I'd say that's the government's problem. That's not the asylum seekers' problem. And I think that you're actually misdirecting and confusing. And the reason why British Red Cross had to conduct this report was to tackle misunderstanding and confusion. The fact that from the 2,000 adults that were polled, nearly 60% thought 75% of migrants come to this country were asylum seekers, where actually the real figure is only 7% of the 100%,
net migration.
Yes, are only asylum seekers. 7%, it's a small number. And the fact that you go around with this rhetoric that, oh, it's the 40,000 coming on the small boats, they're the problem. They're the reason why we can't get
How many?
our
Hold on a
doctor
second.
appointment.
I'm confused about what you just said. How
Right.
many? So
the whole
I'm always
migration.
told by my mate here and everybody else that a majority of people that come on the small boats are refugees and genuine people, right?
Yes.
Is that a fact?
That's small boats.
Yes.
But we're talking about net
this
migration.
is British Red Cross have conducted this to tackle the confusion amongst the British public. God knows where this confusion's come from, which has come from actually Suella Braverman, that actually only 7% make up asylum seekers, whereas the British public think it's 75%.
Ben, so as much as you say it's not racist to question migration and immigration policies,
it is
etc.,
racist.
There's
why?
no...
I tell you why it's racist.
It's not
because Ukraine, the war in Ukraine showed that Britain can respond in an alternative way, but only for Ukrainians.
But you know, Narinder, you know what I'm going to say, Ben. I have to say this, and we always talk about this, and it's important to have different opinions. I've always tried to base my opinion on what the people, the good people of the United Kingdom, who are going through the very thing you mentioned, a cost of living crisis. I think it is fundamentally wrong to say, hold on a second, if you feel that your life is struggling and other people manage to come into this country unheralded and get stuff, that you don't get despite the fact you've paid your taxes for years, how is that racist?
Gerald, that is because it's completely misunderstood. You're blaming 40,000 people for the problems in the NHS, the housing, the gas bills. That's the government's problem. Guess what the government are using?
Let me make my point here. Charity begins at home, and if people are struggling in the UK, you can't turn around and say we've got to help the rest of the world. You need to deal with the problems at home. You're not blaming them. You're blaming the government for letting people come in when they're struggling.
But we have to let people come in.
Just give me 1 second. There's no... So you might very well say that it's not racist to question immigration, because immigration is, ultimately is a government policy, etc. However, there are an awful lot of racist people who use immigration issues to bolster their racism.
Sure, and you could say in the same way there's an awful lot of racist people who were protesting outside the Israeli embassy the other day over the stuff that's going on.
How is that racist?
No, but I'm not saying it's a racist thing to do. I'm saying there's plenty of people perhaps who weren't racist.
Let him speak. Come on, let him speak.
There were perhaps many people who weren't racist there, but there were also plenty of people who were, who don't like Israelis, who don't like Jews.
That's incorrect.
I'm saying that to say there's racist people who support a certain ideology doesn't mean that ideology is inherently racist.
That's not a fact. The fact is this British government, Boris Johnson, allowed Ukrainians to come in all nicely. We welcome them.
But I'm going to say to you, and you're going to look...
This country has never accepted immigrants. They never accepted them in the 50s, 60s. My parents came here.
Afghans?
You know this legal migration. They were legal. My parents...
This could go on forever. I love this. We've got to go to a break.
Jeremy, my parents were legal. But guess what? They weren't welcomed. I'm still not welcomed. I'm still called the...
I've had you here this morning. What are you going on about?
Do not tell me that this country accepts legal migrants. It's a complete...
Never ask me to do this again when you don't give me half an hour.